Hi, everybody. Welcome to the press. Welcome to the second show of our week here, getting you ready for the Valspar Championship. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. We're going to go over the top end of the model here for the Valspar Championship. We'll talk a little bit about horses for courses, what a course fit looks like, current form. Spoiler alert, there's not a whole lot of that, to be honest with you. It's a weird week, and I'll explain a little bit about that here in today's show. And then tomorrow, we will go over the other remaining events of the week. We have the LPGA in the Los Angeles area for the Sayri Pak Championship. We have the Hogue Classic on the Champions Tour in Newport Beach. And we've got the Singapore Classic in, as you guessed it, Singapore on the DP World Tour. But today we focus again on the Valspar Championship, Innisbrook Resort, Copperhead Course, Palm Harbor, Florida, basically the Tampa area. This is, again, a golf course, Larry Packard design. Larry Packard lived to basically be 100 years old, and his architecture is very much like this, which is primarily about trying to create a golf course that really makes you do everything. It's fair. It's an eminently fair golf course. And kind of like TPC Sawgrass, it really doesn't seem to favor anyone in particular. And part of that is because if you look at the data for course fit, and we won't go all the way through it here yet, we'll do the model first. But if you look at the course fit data, you see that it really places an emphasis on putting that very few courses otherwise on the PGA Tour do. And so that leads itself to more random outcomes because, as it turns out, the greens are tough to putt. And if you don't putt them well, then it doesn't really matter how well you play tee to green. And in that sense, that means any kind of quality tee to green game can work. But you got to be able to roll your rock here. And if you can't do that, you're kind of done before you start. So we'll come back to that in a minute. But let's talk about the long-term model that we do for our members at golfnewsnet.com. It's $40 a year to be a member. It's very easy to get involved. Like I said, $40 is not much for a year's worth of this stuff and access to all of our tools. But each week we go over the top 10-ish parts of the model just so you can kind of get a sense of the field and who I'm looking at and why and what I'm seeing this week based on the data. So here's our top 10. Xander Schauffele's number 1 by a significant margin over Justin Thomas, who is number 2. Sam Burns, 2-time back-to-back champion 21-22, is 3rd. Jordan Spieth is 4th. Sungjae Im is 5th. Doug Ghim has rocketed up the rankings. He is 6th this week. He's just playing great golf, and it's starting to catch up. Matthew Neesmith has a very good finish here. That's why he is 7th, and that's in recent memory. Tony Finau is 8th. Nick Taylor's 9th. Cameron Young's 10th. Keegan Bradley's 11th. Keith Mitchell's 12th. Brian Harmon's 13th. Matt McNeely's 14th. Billy Horschel 15th. Brendan Todd 16th. Andrew Novak, I want to point out, because we've talked about him on the show the last couple of weeks, really. He's 19th in the model. And he's playing good golf. Victor Perez is up there, albeit with a limited data set. Eric Cole's kind of starting to fall down the rankings a little bit because he's starting to kind of come back to earth to a degree. And I don't know what the reason for that is, but he is coming back to earth a little bit. So point him out as well. And then a former champion, Adam Hadwin, is 24th in the ranking. And I realize for someone who's selling access to this model that telling you golfers down to like 24 and 25 isn't necessarily the best thing to do financially, but hey, we do it anyway. Now, that all said, let's try to pair these guys up on a short-term model where we're looking at the last 10 events played and we're looking for players who are gaining more than 1.2 strokes in total per round over those last 10 events. We do not have many of them in this field. Hayden Springer's up there. He's been playing some great golf lately, but that's really because of his chipping. I mean, he's saving himself with chipping and putting. Otherwise, it's not very good. Torbjorn Olesen is on that list. He's been playing good golf. He's been playing good golf everywhere, really, and he does it off the tee and on the approach. I think you got to like him this week. Doug Ghim, same thing, playing well on the approach and in total. Keith Mitchell on the approach and in total. I don't really mind so much that they're not gaining huge on putting. Ghim is gaining quite a bit putting-wise. Keith Mitchell, not so much, 0.27 strokes per round. Torbjorn Olesen right in that same range. They're practically the same guy at this point. But I'm fine with that. That is good golf. I am fine with all of that. Nick Taylor is not gaining as much on the approach as I'd like to see, and the putting is but he is doing well overall in strokes gained. Same with Billy Horschel, who he's almost kind of out of sight, out of mind for me, but he is playing well, and again, part of a big portion of that is his ability to save strokes around the greens. And I kind of diminish the value of strokes gained around the green because it is variable, and if you're gaining strokes around the green, that means you're hitting it like junk otherwise. So I don't take as much from Hayden Springer or Billy Horschel, for that matter, based on their breakdown. The only other person in the field that would pop to me on this list is Ben Silverman, and that's because he is gaining pretty significantly on the approach, 0.615 strokes per round on the approach in the last 10 events. That's a good number, but his strokes gained putting, he's losing about 0.17. That's canceled out by what he's gaining off the tee. So the around the green game's pretty good. Maybe a guy worth looking out for. I probably will not place any action on him for the week, but you do you. It's up to you. So again, short term, we don't really have a lot to work with, really much at all. And that makes it an awkward week because you're playing with people who, and we'll talk about this in a second when we look at the current form plays. So if you're looking at current form plays, we like to look for players who have had multiple top 15 finishes on the PGA Tour in the last 5 events. Well, we're really looking at the last 6. We've got Puerto Rico, and we only have 3 players in the field. And the only 2 I really care about are Andrew Novak and Cameron Young. So, I don't want to bet Cameron Young at the price he's at because he's never won. And I'm willing to lose that he won, or maybe catch him later in the week, like I did at the Players and at API, where he just went, okay, well, you kind of have to bet the winner now. And it just turned out to be Scotty Scheffler. If it turns out to be Cameron Young plays really great first 2 rounds, then maybe you get involved, you sacrifice some of the price, get it 10-1, 8-1, something like that. I'm willing to live with that, especially because it's a weird week. Then you're looking at event finish history. We don't really have many players in this field with good event finish history. It's Sam Burns and Justin Thomas. They have 3 top 15s each. Sam's got 2 wins and a 6th. JT's got some close calls. Everyone else might have 1. Like Spieth's got a win. Adam Hadwin's got a win. Gary Woodland's got a win. But not in the last 5 years. But, they've got wins, but they don't really have much else to show for it. And that, to me, makes it pretty tricky to try to find golfers that you like, because you want to kind of have a little of each. You want to have some good current form. You want to have some good juju at this golf course. And you put them together and you make that an easy pick. Well, that's not what we have here. And then if you look at the course fit, again, we talked about this before, but 38% of the strokes gained among the top 25 come on putting, which means 62% comes from tee to green. And the difference between off the tee and on the approach is probably the smallest I've seen on the PGA Tour. You really kind of have to just do it tee to green. And then because it's a tough golf course, because there's usually a good amount of rough and it's usually pretty hard to advance, you've got to gain strokes around the green because you're going to miss greens. That's just the way it's going to work if you finish in the top 25. If we just did this for the top 5, I would assume the percentage would look a lot different. That's just my thinking. But the way I like to do it with course fit, I like to look at the top 25 because I think that's a great week. If you finished in the top 25 out of 144 or 156 player starting field, then you were in the top 20%. And if you're in the top 20%, you had a great week. You may not get paid completely like that, but you had a great week. So, that all said, a couple of course fits seem to strike my fancy. Keith Mitchell, Sam Burns, Bud Cauley, who I should have thought about a little bit more yesterday, but again, out of sight, kind of out of mind. But he is in the field this week. He did play well at PGA National. Taylor Moore's the defending champion. His game kind of matches. Sepp Straka matches here, and he may be worth a look. I have kind of gotten away from Sepp Straka, and I think that's in part because he's so erratic. And I really wanted this to be a year where he would become more consistent. and follow up on what he did to make the Ryder Cup team, and that has just not happened yet. So you kind of put him on the back burner. He's kind of gotten replaced in my brain space with Nick Taylor. Well, I still think the data shows that Sepp Straka is worth a look this week. And Brian Harman appears on this Course Fits list, who I love this week. And if you want to bet him pre-tournament, I'm fine with that. So that's kind of all the tools that we have based on the overall history of the tournament, what the data tells us about the tournament holistically. But I do want to talk a little bit about strokes gained by round in this tournament. It's not, again, not a tremendously long history because most players aren't in this tournament very long. But I want to talk about it for the specific reason of trying to think about a first round leader. Sepp Straka did great here in the opener last year and then kind of struggled the rest of the way. Matt McNealy, same thing, struggled in the middle rounds, did well in the end. McNealy may be an interesting pick for first round leader. Keegan Bradley gains a lot of strokes here in the first round, tends to come out hot. Now, he's done the full Keegan also, where he's gained a ton of strokes in the first round and then missed the cut. So that tampers that. Sam Burns is right up there. Ben Griffin had a good year last year. David Lipsky has done well. Lucas Glover has done well here. Stuart Sink has historically done well here. Sungjae Im, Scott Stallings has done well here. Joel Damon, that might be a guy to think about. Victor Perez did well here last year in the opening round and then struggled in the third round. He is playing pretty good golf. I think he is worth a look here as well in that first round leader market. Maybe not to win the tournament, but first round leader market. I wanted to point that out. That's a tool available to our members at golfnewsnet.com. I think it's extremely helpful when you're trying to think about first round leader plays for one, but also as you get toward the weekend and you start to look at players. Now, when you're thinking about rounds 3 and 4, maybe you look at the halfway mark and you go, all right, someone who's kind of well back that might be able to do something, might be able to make a move. You want to look at this tool, the strokes gained by round by tournament, and then also just strokes gained on rounds 3 and 4 in general. Because then if you can put that together and you see double overlap, that's someone you might want to think about pretty strongly going into the weekend. But that's come the weekend. So that all said, I don't feel like I need to change a whole lot of my perspective about the week. I feel like the data kind of confirms a lot of my suspicions. I like Brian Harman. I like Doug Ghim. I like Matt McNealy. I like Andrew Novak. I like Jimmy Stanger. That's a little bit more of an outside shot. I do like an Alex Bjork here because he's a good ball striker and because he seems pretty adaptable to any kind of environment on the PGA Tour, where he can take his game with the quality of his ball striking and pretty much play any golf course. And if it's working, it doesn't really matter what it is. So I think that's a good play. Harman's down to 20-1. I think I've seen him 25 other places. Sepp's 35-1, which is the same price as Nick Taylor. The Nick Taylor numbers around putting are concerning, given the way this golf course plays. But that would be the same concern with Sepp Straka. So both of those are a worry. Maybe a lot of people put money on Doug Ghim. He's now 40-1, so you missed that train. Keith Mitchell, 40-1 might be a decent pivot. Some people bet Bezadenhout. I think I still want to stick with him. He's now 45. He was 55. McNealy, I think he opened closer to 70. Now he's 55. So a lot of the names that we've put out there have already been bet. And it's not hard to see why. Brendan Todd as well. They're people who move markets. They listen to this show. So when we talk about this stuff, I'm not betting in those kinds of increments. I'm betting in $25 to $50 increments. Those are my half unit plays. So that's where I'm thinking about it. So I'm not putting the financial interest to move the market, but the people who listen to the show, yeah, they can put a whole lot more money up than I can doing this. So I think you should take their advice, but we should have taken it yesterday. Billy Horschel's been bet down a little bit. He's 80-1. Matt Neesmith is 100-1. Still maybe a decent value. Novak's down from, I think he was 130. He's 110 now. Bjork's bet down a little bit. I think he was 150, now 130. Jimmy Stanger still in there, so still a little value there. And then the other guy I wanted to, my super mega long shot of the week, Adrian Dumont de Chassard, is still out there 300-1. Still out there and going to get him. if you would like to kind of have a super weird sweat on a guy who's had a horrible year, but did show some signs of life in his last start. Maybe, just throwing this out there, maybe Stewart Cink at 400-1 is worth a consideration. He's been playing well on the PGA Tour Champions. He's probably got some red ass in him because he blew a lead in the last PGA Tour Champions event, the Cologuard Classic. He was up big. He should have won, and then he stunk it up on Sunday and let it get away from him. 400-1. He would not be priced anywhere near this if you were playing the 50-plus tour this week, playing the Hogue Classic. But in this, he is getting that kind of number. That could be interesting to me. Even if for $5, it could get destroyed right away. But I think he is a guy worth looking at. He still has plenty of strength, still plenty of pop in the bat. He's probably not hitting at 310, 320. You don't have to around here. You can just play your game and it'll work out okay. So maybe another super mega long shot for the week. But I did want to point him out because the numbers did come out well for him as it looked in the course fit and the history in terms of first round strokes gained. If he gets off to a good start, he got off to a good start for 2 rounds in the last PGA Tour Champions event. If he gets off to a good start, you never know. Impulses can kick in. Adrenaline kicks in. You start hitting it farther. Start playing kind of like you were young. Something crazy could happen here. I mean, we've had 2 weeks of the most predictable outcome possible happen. The number 1 player in the world beat everybody 2 weeks in a row. Maybe we are due for a regression back toward the way this season has been, or the exact opposite is going to happen, and the person you expect to win this tournament is going to win. For me, that's Brian Harman. For some people, that's maybe Cameron Young or Sam Burns. Maybe it's Justin Thomas. But I think it's at least worth having something like that in your pocket. I think that can happen here. And it's not that far out of the realm of possibility. So just a couple names to throw out there if you're thinking something super deep for the week. That all said, I haven't talked about this in a few weeks, and I want to do the tournament props, and that is winning margin. 1 stroke exactly plus 200, playoff plus 330. I think we're going to get a close one here. That's just my thought about it. I would look at 1 stroke or a playoff. This tournament tends to be close. It has a way about it of doing that. Kind of, you make bogeys down the stretch, and a couple guys make birdies, and I think one or 2 strokes, or 1 stroke or a playoff is probably the way to go. And then you get 4 strokes exactly or 2 strokes exactly for plus 350. I think if you're going to try and do that, try and bet 3 things, then you're going to do playoff 4 and 2. And you try to just barely come out ahead if you want to do that. Again, I don't think that's worth it. I think you'd pick maybe 2 max, but have a little fun with it. That's up to you. And then round finishing position, first round leader bet. We did talk about, the odds aren't all that different. Honestly, they're inflated for some of the shorter shots, but first round leader play. But, maybe you look at a Taylor Moore at 70-1. Maybe you look at a Sepp Straka. Doug Ghim is out there. Maverick McNeely certainly is a play I think is worth looking at 60-1. He does tend to kind of get out the gate hot. Andrew Novak, 90-1, worth getting out the gate hot. I tend to kind of wait on those first round leader plays. Do it live. I don't need to lock up my money when I don't know anything that's happening. The weather can change. The golf course could be different than I expect. Let's see some data before you do that. That was always my recommendation around a first round leader play. And then get someone in the early wave who starts out pretty well. See if that kind of lines up with your assessment of the tournament and the field. And then maybe you kind of get in halfway through the day as the afternoon wave starting, and you take your chance on whether the afternoon wave can do better than the morning wave. And typically the splits are pretty even. You can get winners out of both, but I tend to favor the morning wave personally. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the show. I appreciate you listening. If you have any comments for me, Ryan@thegolfnewsnet.com. I'm on Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky @Ryan Ballingy. Facebook and YouTube, Ryan Ballingy Golf. Golf News Net's on all those services and the handle Golf News Net. You can join Golf News Net for $40 a year at golfnewsnet.com. Very easy to get involved, get access to all of our tools, even more than what we talk about on the show. Tomorrow, we will go over the Fir Hills Savory Pak Championship, the Hogue Classic, and the Singapore Classic, just for a couple minutes on each, and then we're going to spend some time talking about the Masters, because the Champions Dinner menu's out, the winners press conference today, the preview press conference. It's right here. It's right at our doorstep, the Masters. So we need to be getting ready and thinking about it. So we'll have some conversation about that tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. We will talk to you tomorrow on The Press.